All right, so today we're going deep, really deep, into an ancient text.
Oh, I love a good deep dive.
Yeah. And this one's a fascinating one, I think. It's the Book of Enoch.
Oh, wow.
And, I think most people listening have probably heard of Noah, but they might not have heard of his great-grandfather, Enoch.
Right.
And this book basically claims to reveal all of his visions and prophecies.
Okay.
And they're pretty intense.
I bet, yeah.
Especially when it comes to, the whole Judgment Day thing.
Yeah, well, that always gets people's attention.
Yeah, for sure.
So what makes the Book of Enoch so interesting is that it gives us this window into how Jewish people saw the world during, really chaotic time. We're talking 300 BC to 100 AD.
Okay.
A time when, things were politically unstable and religious ideas were kind of, shifting around.
It's like we're finding this, secret chapter of history, right?
Exactly.
But it makes you wonder, why was it left out of the Bible? What was in there that maybe was a little too much for the people back then?
Yeah, good question. It's puzzled people for centuries, The Book of Enoch, it's this amazing mix of mythology and historical stories and these, really, intense apocalyptic prophecies.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's not just a straightforward story. It's really layered and complex.
Okay.
But at the heart of it all, there's Enoch himself. He's this chosen guy, this seer, who's getting these direct messages from God.
Okay, so let's talk about one of those messages.
Okay.
In chapter 1, Enoch has this really intense vision of Judgment Day.
Right.
Can you kind of paint us a picture of what that looks like?
Imagine this. The heavens open up.
Okay.
And God comes down with all these angels ready to judge everybody on earth.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's this feeling like you can't escape. Like everything you've ever done, all your secrets, everything's out in the open.
Wow.
In front of the ultimate judge. It's meant to really make you stop and think, even thousands of years later.
Yeah, I bet. So how did people back then understand this whole judgment thing? Was it all about punishment, fire and brimstone?
Well, the Book of Enoch definitely doesn't shy away from, dramatic images of punishment.
Right.
Especially for the wicked, for the people who've done bad things. But it also gets into this deeper meaning of divine justice.
Okay.
Which is more than just, getting even. Remember, in Jewish tradition, God's this righteous judge.
Right.
And judgment is about restoring balance, revealing the truth. It's like holding up a mirror to humanity.
Okay.
And saying, look, this is who you are, and these are the consequences of what you've done.
It's like a giant reality check, right?
Yeah.
Forcing us to look at our choices.
Absolutely.
And how they shape not just our future, but also who we become.
Exactly. And that's what's so thought-provoking about the Book of Enoch. It says judgment isn't just about the final decision.
Oh, okay.
It's a chance to change, to transform.
Wow.
Yeah, there's this incredible passage in chapter 1 where Enoch describes judgment as this fiery thing, a crucible that refines the soul. He writes, the righteous shall be chosen for eternal life, their souls cleansed by the fire of judgment, and they shall shine like the stars in the heavens.
That's a powerful image. So it's not just about avoiding punishment, it's about becoming better versions of ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. It's about aligning yourself with what's right, with righteousness.
Okay, so that makes me wonder, who are these righteous people?
Yeah.
How does the Book of Enoch define righteousness?
Well, that's where the idea of justice in action comes in.
Okay.
It's not enough to just believe in God or go through the motions of religion.
Okay.
True righteousness, according to Enoch, it's about what you do, how you treat others, how you act when things are tough, when you're tempted.
Okay, yeah.
It's about living your life based on ethical principles, honesty, compassion, resisting those selfish urges we all have.
It sounds like a challenge, especially, in the world we live in. There's so much injustice, so much temptation everywhere you look.
Right.
How does the Book of Enoch deal with that tension? How does it encourage people to stay on the right path, even when surrounded by so much, darkness?
Well, one of the most fascinating things about the Book of Enoch is how it portrays fallen angels.
Okay.
These figures, they represent what happens when you stray from righteousness, when you give into temptation, when you choose power and selfishness over what God wants.
So it's like this classic battle, right, between good and evil.
Exactly.
But it's not some abstract idea. It's tied to the choices we make every day.
Yeah.
It's like the book is saying, look, if you wander too far from the light, you might end up falling, just like those angels did.
Exactly. And these fallen angels, they're not just, scary stories.
Okay.
They're a warning, a reminder that even those closest to God can mess up, can become corrupt.
Makes you wonder, what were the specific temptations that caused them to fall? And how do those temptations relate to our own lives today?
That's a question that takes us right to the core of what it means to be human. And it's something we'll dig into more when we really get into the stories of these fallen angels.
Okay.
And how they affected both heaven and earth.
I'm already hooked. But before we get lost in all the angel drama, let's get back to Enoch and his vision. So he's had this intense encounter with the divine, witnessed this cosmic courtroom, and now he's got to share this message with everyone else. How does he react to that? What's his mission?
Well, that's where Enoch's role as a prophet really comes into focus. He's not just passively watching these visions.
Okay.
He's changed by them. He's terrified by the thought of judgment, but also inspired by the possibility of redemption.
So it's not just about giving a scary sermon, right? He's wrestling with these huge truths himself, trying to make sense of it all.
Absolutely. And that's what makes his message so powerful. It's not coming from a place of, being distant. It's coming from his own struggles. To understand God, to understand how a loving God can also be a God of judgment and punishment.
It makes you wonder what was going through his mind as he tried to explain all this to people.
Yeah.
How did he balance the fear of judgment with the hope of transformation?
And that question leads us right into the next chapter of our deep dive, where we'll explore how people reacted to Enoch's message and how his visions of judgment and justice shapes the religious landscape of his time.
So we've got Enoch, this prophet, right? He's had this incredible experience, these visions of judgment and justice. How do people react to all of this? It seems like a pretty tough conversation to start,
You can only imagine, right? Mixed reactions, for sure. Here's Enoch, claiming to have seen the secrets of heaven, talking about this cosmic courtroom where everyone's held accountable. I'm sure some people were scared, some were skeptical, and maybe some were really moved by his call to live righteously.
Yeah, it's like he's dropping this huge truth bomb on everyone, saying, hey, how we live, it really, really matters. So did his message actually make a difference? Did it change anything socially or religiously?
Well, that's where the Book of Enoch gets really interesting. It seems like Enoch's message didn't just disappear, it sparked something, a movement. He had followers who believed his visions and embraced this idea of living righteously to prepare for judgment.
So he's like the original influencer starting this spiritual awakening.
You could say that. But it wasn't easy. The Book of Enoch also hints at some pushback against his message. Some people stuck to their traditional beliefs, some questioned his authority, and some might have even seen him as a threat, shaking things up.
Which makes sense, right? When someone comes along and challenges the way things are, there's going to be resistance. So how did Enoch deal with the people who opposed him? Did he try to debate them, persuade them, or did he just stick to his message?
The book doesn't really go into detail about those specific interactions, but it emphasizes staying true to what you believe, even when people oppose you. There's this underlying message of courage, of not backing down from what you think is right, even when it's unpopular or maybe even dangerous.
That's a message that still resonates today. Standing up for what's right can be tough. So what can we learn from Enoch's experience? How can we handle those situations where our beliefs clash with the people around us?
Well, I think Enoch's story shows us that real change often starts with one person, one voice, willing to speak truth to power, even if it's uncomfortable. It's about leading by example, living by the principles you believe in, and trusting that even if not everyone gets it right away, you might plant a seed that grows later.
It's like a ripple effect, right? Even if we don't see immediate results, our actions can still have a big impact down the line.
Okay, so we talked about Enoch's message of judgment and his call to righteousness, but the Book of Enoch also has these crazy stories about the fallen angels we mentioned before. Can you give us a glimpse into what happened there? Oh, this is where the Book of Enoch really dives into myth and legend. And it gets pretty wild. Remember, these fallen angels weren't just watching humanity from a distance. They got involved with earthly stuff in some, scandalous ways.
Okay, give us the juicy details. What kind of trouble did they get into?
Well, according to the book, some of these angels, driven by lust and a hunger for power, decided to mate with human women. And guess what? This union resulted in, wait for it, giants. Powerful beings who cause chaos on Earth.
Hold on, wait. Angel-human hybrids. Giant offspring roaming around. This sounds like a movie.
It definitely has that epic mythological feeling. But these stories weren't just for entertainment. They had a deeper meaning.
Okay, I'm listening. What was the point of these wild stories?
Well, one way to understand them is that they were trying to explain how evil and corruption enter the world. The Book of Enoch suggests that these fallen angels and their giant kids messed up the natural order. They brought violence, wickedness, all sorts of bad stuff into human society.
So it's like the ancient version of blaming everything on those rebellious teenagers. But on a serious note, it makes you think about the stories we tell ourselves to explain good and evil. That struggle between our better and darker impulses.
Right, exactly. And while we may not take these stories literally today, they tap into something fundamental about being human, that constant battle within ourselves, the temptation to stray from what's right.
It's like those fallen angels represent our shadow side, the part of us that can be greedy, power-hungry, and not care about others. And those giants, they embody the destructive consequences when those impulses run wild.
That's a really insightful way to see it. And the Book of Enoch doesn't just leave us with this story of chaos and corruption. It offers some hope. It describes how God sees the mess these fallen angels created and steps in to restore order and bring justice.
So it's like a cosmic cleanup crew coming in to set things right. What happens then?
God sends a flood to wipe out the giants and punish the fallen angels, imprisoning them in this dark abyss. Then he chooses Noah, a righteous man, to save a small group of humans and start over.
Wait, a flood? Noah? Are we talking about the Noah's Ark story from the Bible?
That's right. The Book of Enoch actually gives us a backstory to the flood, connecting it to this bigger cosmic drama of fallen angels, divine judgment, and the importance of righteousness.
Wow, that adds a whole new dimension to that story. The flood becomes a symbol of both punishment and purification, giving humanity a chance to reset.
Precisely. That theme of second chances, of redemption, it's really central to the message of the Book of Enoch. Even when things are really bad, there's always a possibility for renewal, for finding our way back to righteousness.
It's a message of hope, even in the darkest times. So we have this ancient text full of crazy stories, intense visions, and a powerful message about living a just and righteous life. But how does all of this relate to us today? What does the Book of Enoch mean for people in the 21st century dealing with a whole different set of challenges?
That's the question that connects the ancient world to ours. And it's something we'll explore in depth as we continue our deep dive into the Book of Enoch.
All right, so we've gone through these ancient prophecies, right? The drama with the fallen angels, and we've talked about these big ideas of judgment and justice. But how does any of this relate to us today, in the 21st century? I mean, we're not exactly dealing with giants running around or floods destroying civilizations.
Yeah, true, but the main themes in the Book of Enoch, the impact of our choices that struggle for righteousness and the idea of redemption, those things are timeless. They speak to what it means to be human no matter when you live.
So it's not about taking the stories literally, right? It's more about finding those universal truths that still apply to us today. Can you give us some examples of how these ancient ideas connect to modern challenges?
Definitely. For example, take judgment in the book. It's this huge cosmic event. But in our daily lives, we're always making choices that have consequences, right? We're judged by our actions, how we treat people, how we live up to our own values.
Yeah, it's like they say, character is who you are when no one's watching. The Book of Enoch seems to be saying that those little everyday choices, they actually do matter in the big picture.
Exactly. And it's not just about some outside force judging us. It's also about looking inward, holding ourselves accountable, trying to be better, more just people.
It's like that voice inside us that asks, is this the right thing to do? Even when it's hard or inconvenient. So how do we develop that sense of righteousness, that commitment to living a just life, especially when the world seems to reward selfishness and greed?
That's the big question, isn't it? The Book of Enoch suggests it starts with awareness, recognizing our own biases, admitting that we're capable of both good and evil, and being mindful of how our choices affect others.
So it's like taking a moment to ask ourselves, am I helping to create a more just and compassionate world, or am I just making things worse?
Right, and that self-reflection is only the beginning. It's also about actually doing something, speaking out against injustice, supporting those who are mistreated, and challenging systems that create inequality. It's about choosing kindness and compassion over apathy and indifference.
So it's not enough to just be a good person on our own. We need to get involved with the world around us, using our voices and actions to make a positive difference.
Exactly, and even though we can't solve all the world's problems on our own, the Book of Enoch reminds us that even small acts of kindness and justice can make a difference. It's about planting those seeds of righteousness, even if we might not see them fully grow in our lifetime.
It's like they say, be the change you want to see in the world. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the Book of Enoch, What's the most important thing you want listeners to take away from this?
I think the most powerful message is that we have the power to choose our own path. We can give in to temptation and continue cycles of harm and injustice, or we can choose righteousness and work towards a world that reflects our best values.
It's a strong reminder that even when surrounded by darkness and chaos, there's always hope, a chance for redemption for ourselves and for the world around us.
And that's something worth remembering as we navigate the complexities of modern life. It's a call to action, an invitation to become agents of change, to live out the principles of justice and compassion in everything we do.
I love that, and I think that's the perfect place to end. A huge thank you to you for sharing your expertise and to our listeners for joining us on this deep dive into the Book of Enoch. We hope this has been insightful, thought-provoking, and maybe even inspiring.
And remember, the conversation doesn't end here. Think about what resonated with you. What questions are you still wondering about? We encourage you to keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep searching for those deeper truths that connect us all.
Until next time, keep diving deep.